good afternoon, everybody. Hope that you're having a wonderful day and welcome to yet another read along with the Chattering Magpie. We are continuing our journey with Jane Eyre. So far we have read, 9 chapters. I think this is the 5th session or so, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're getting through the story, and so far we've been introduced to a very interesting character, if I may say so myself, who has some very unfortunately very sad circumstances in her life. She is an orphan, so and she's in a school where it's so miserable, and her only relative cast her off. So right now, and not to mention, last chapter that we read, her best friend died from tuberculosis. So it's not been fun for poor Jane Eyre. However, she does in her own way try to forge on, and so yeah, we have this read along where we continue to see what happens in her story. But before we do, I would love to just say hello and acknowledge the folks that are our early gang. So Vincent, my friend, how are you? Now, unfortunately, you're part of Europe gang, so right now it's the middle of the night for you, and you won't be joining us, as you say here. Yes, you are the first in the chat. Hooray! Congratulations! Have a whole bunch of hearts to celebrate your being first. But I hope that you enjoy the replay later. Thank you for wishing us all a good day, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Red Tempest complains that Vincent beat him to the punch at being number 1. However, I do appreciate you trying. So even though I know you also said that you probably won't be able to be at the live read because you still have to catch up on the previous one, that's okay. I still send you all my love. And I hope you enjoy the other one. Well, so we have Little Butterfly says, hello, Little Butterfly. Says, I have some memes from the last read, but can't post them right now. I will when I get the chance. Sure thing, no problem. I always look forward to all your memes, Little Butterfly. They're so good. Especially because you incorporate shows that I love, like the BBC ones. So much fun. Yeah, and hey, Crusher, thank you for joining us. Hello. And happy to have you here. So, I have good news, you guys. I think I'm gonna do my first upload in this channel soon. Though I don't know if I should. Well, so you guys know how I did the Blue Castle libraries, yes, and I was recording them, yes, and I was editing the recording ones. I used a better mic rather than the one from my headset. So I finished editing, and I bounced out the audio file, and I'm gonna compile it into one big audio file for downloading later. But I'm just so excited that I finally finished. You guys, finishing the first of the sessions is like a goal, because I usually tend to abandon projects halfway through. So I'm like, no, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna edit the whole thing. So just having the first 3 chapters, first 4 chapters, because I immediately delved right into the next one. So doing that has given me like a lot of motivation, so I'm gonna continue doing that. It's gonna be my little side project. And I was floundering a bit on some merch for the Blue Castle, and if you want to see like a little snapshot behind the scenes as to how that is going, I posted like a picture a few days ago on X. So I think it's gonna turn out very, very cute. In fact, I would, if I were not me, I would, and I found these online, I would so buy them. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. I can't say when, but it'll happen. So anyway, you guys, we are continuing Jane Eyre, like I said. And so for those of you who are here, I'm sure you guys already followed with me. But if you haven't, just again, Jane Eyre is orphan, got sent to school, her best friend died. Jane Eyre is very passionate by nature, very impulsive. She lets herself, she tries, she lets her emotions get, like, almost control her, I guess. But her best friend, who she met at school, was kind of like her foil, like her mentor, and like trying to, you have to be a bit more mature, accept the discipline because ultimately it's good for you, and all those things. We also got to meet Mr. Brocklehurst, who is an absolute hypocrite. He claims to be Christian. He says that it is a Christian duty to make children suffer, that they have like rotten food if necessary, as long as, because it'll help their spiritual growth. It's all utter nonsense. So we met him, and I spit on his memory. So, and we also got, but on the other side of the spectrum, we have a teacher who is also very virtuous and a very good example for Jane to follow and aspire to be. Yes. Okay, so Crusher says, "Hey Magpie, what are you gonna do for Mother's Day?" See, we have Mexican Mother's Day, which is today, and I didn't do anything for my mom. But then the good thing is I can always say like, I'm totally doing something for you on Sunday. So on Sunday we are going to we're gonna drive to the beach. Not the regular beach where we always go to, but there's a really nice beach that when we just do like a whole day thing, and it's really clean, and probably gonna, hopefully it's not too cold, so we're just gonna head there. I'm preparing a special picnic for my mom, and possibly some brunch before, or I don't know. There's a nice place there, so we'll see. Something along those lines. I'm a very spontaneous, like, I try to plan things out, but sometimes we just have to be flexible. So I'm not being very rigid about what's going on. So either we have brunch before we go to the beach, or we have like a nice dinner coming back from the beach after our picnic and stuff like that. So that's what we're doing. And since there's like hiking trails and all that stuff over there, it'll be like a full day thing. So just packing snacks, picnic foods, and doing all the things for Mother's Day. Yep, that's what we're doing. Nothing too fancy, but it's something that my mom loves, just spending time with us. So yep. What are you guys doing for Mother's Day? Any advice on what would be a good gift? I don't know if your mother likes flowers. So you could get her flowers, of course. You could also get her something she really needs, like okay, a lot of times people give their moms stuff to do like around the house, so like pots and pans, a new vacuum cleaner or whatnot. It's like, no, think about what your mom wants. She probably wants like a day off just to be pampered. So you don't have to get like a huge gift certificate for like a spa day. You can, of course, but depending on your thing. But maybe what you can do is do like get her or pay for like a manicure, and you can go with her too to get a manicure. Guys should spend time with their moms, so she can get a manicure done. You can get a manicure done too. Hey, it's relaxing, okay? Or a pedicure too. Dude, go spend time with your mom. Treat her to that, and then maybe a meal afterwards or whatever. Just spend time with your mothers, people. Just don't be afraid to have a conversation with her, and because moms are special. They have so much wisdom and so much love, and I'm sure all they want is just to spend time with you. So invest in that. You don't have to do something costly. You don't have to spend so much money and kill yourself over what to get her. Just spend time with her. Remind her that you love her, and remind yourself that our mommies are not going to be with us forever. So cherish every single moment you can with her. Anyway, that is my advice to you, and anybody who wants any advice from the wise magpie, do feel free to ask. I am here for you. Yes, Teal reminds us here, back to Jane Eyre. Yes, Helen did die of consumption, which is tuberculosis. So we had some comments before in the previous chapter we had you guys' reaction. I always find it really interesting to read, and I forgot to explain what at the end what her top. So she says that her grave is still at Lowood School. Before then, it was only covered by a grassy mound. Now a gray marble tablet marks the spot. So we are assuming, and it's okay for you to assume, that Jane is responsible for putting like a headstone or something to mark her best friend's resting place. In it, she put her name, Helen Burns, and the word resurgam, whatever, which means I will rise again. I didn't explain it, but I think it is like I'll rise again. So resucitaré or whatever. Yeah. So that's what it means. So it's the blessed assurance that Helen, as a very pious Christian, it reflects her hope ultimately that she would rise again. Yes. So Crusher says there was also a time skip, I think, after Helen's death. Okay, so we're gonna get at the time skip right now. It'll explain to us what happens afterwards, because now we get to know, like, okay, what are the things that what are the consequences of a typhus epidemic breaking out in the school? Because that's not normal, you guys, for so many children to have died in an epidemic at the school. So we're gonna learn what happens because of that, and how it affects the children at Lowood. Yes, Crusher. Since we assume that Jane is the one that went back to Lowood and had them put the marker, she of course was able to say okay, put her name, and then she was able to put that word, resurgam, I'll rise again. All right, at least that is what is assumed. I doubt Mr. Brocklehurst was the one that put that in. All right, everybody, let's continue on. We are now at chapter 10. Hitherto. I hate this word, you guys. I don't know how to say it, and I keep I keep telling myself to look it up. Hitter, whatever. Anyway, chapter 10. Hitherto, I have recorded in detail the events of my insignificant existence. To the first 10 years of my life, I have given almost as many chapters. But this is not to be a regular autobiography. I am only bound to invoke memory, where I know her responses will possess some degree of interest. Therefore, I now pass a space of 8 years almost in silence. A few lines only are necessary to keep up the links of the connection. When the typhus fever had fulfilled its mission of devastation at Lowood, it gradually disappeared from thence, but not till its virulence and the number of its victims had drawn public attention on the school. Inquiry was made into the origin of the scourge, and by degrees various facts came out which excited public indignation in a high degree. The unhealthy nature of the site, the quantity and quality of the children's food, the brackish fetid water used in its preparation, the pupils' wretched clothing and accommodations. All these things were discovered, and the discovery produced a result mortifying to Mr. Brocklehurst, but beneficial to the institution. Several wealthy and benevolent individuals in the county subscribed largely for the erection of a more convenient building in a better situation. New regulations were made, improvements in diet and clothing introduced. The funds of the school were entrusted to the management of a committee. Mr. Brocklehurst, who, from his wealth and family connections, could not be overlooked, still retained the post of treasurer, but he was aided in the discharge of his duties by gentlemen of rather more enlarged and sympathizing minds. His office of inspector, too, was shared by those who knew how to combine reason with strictness, comfort with economy, compassion with uprightness. The school, thus improved, became in time a truly useful and noble institution. I remained an inmate of its walls after its regeneration for 8 years, 6 as a pupil and 2 as a teacher, and in both capacities I bear my testimony to its value and importance. During these 8 years, my life was uniform, but not unhappy, because it was not inactive. I had the means of an excellent education placed within my reach, a fondness for some of my studies, and a desire to excel in all, together with a great delight in pleasing my teachers, especially such as I loved, urged me on. I availed myself fully of the advantages afforded me. In time I rose to be the first girl of the first class. Then I was invested with the office of teacher, which I discharged with zeal for 2 years, but at the end of that time I altered. Miss Temple, through all changes, had thus far continued superintendent of the seminary. To her instruction I owed the best part of my acquirements. Her friendship and society had been my continual solace. She had stood me in the stead of mother, governess, and, latterly, companion. At this period she married, removed with her husband, a clergyman, an excellent man, almost worthy of such a wife, to a distant county, and consequently was lost to me. From the day she left I was no longer the same. With her was gone every settled feeling, every association that made Lowood in some degree a home to me. I had imbibed from her something of her nature and much of her habits, more harmonious thoughts. What seemed better regulated feelings had become the inmates of my mind. I had given in allegiance to duty and order. I was quiet. I believed I was content. To the eyes of others, usually even to my own, I appeared a disciplined and subdued character. But destiny, in the shape of Reverend Mr. Nasmyth, came between me and Miss Temple. I saw her in her travelling dress step into a post-chaise, shortly after the marriage ceremony. I watched the chaise mount the hill and disappeared beyond its brow, and then retired to my own room, and there spent in solitude the greatest part of the half-holiday granted in honour of the occasion. I walked about the chamber most of the time. I imagined myself only to be regretting my loss and thinking how to repair it. But when my reflections were concluded and I looked up, I found out that the afternoon was gone and evening far advanced. Another discovery dawned on me, namely, that in the interval I had undergone a transforming process, that my mind had put off all it had borrowed of Miss Temple, or rather, that she had taken with her the serene atmosphere I had been breathing in her vicinity, and that now I was left in my natural element, and beginning to feel the stirring of old emotions. It did not seem as if a prop were withdrawn, but rather as if a motive were gone. It was not the power to be tranquil it was not the power to be tranquil which had failed me, but the reason for tranquillity was no more. My world had for some years been in Lowood. My experience had been of its rules and systems. Now I remembered that the real world was wide, and that a variety of and that a varied field of hopes and fears, of sensations and excitements, awaited those who had courage to go forth into its expanse, to seek real knowledge of life amidst its perils. I went to my window, opened it, and looked out. There were 2 wings of the building. There was the garden, there were the skirts of Lowood, there was a hilly horizon. My eye passed all other objects to rest on those most remote, the blue peaks. It was those I longed to surmount. All within their boundary of rock and heath seemed prison ground, exile limits. I traced the white road winding round the base of one mountain and vanishing in a gorge between 2. How I longed to follow it further. I recalled the time when I had travelled that very road in a coach. I remembered descending that hill at twilight. An age seemed to have elapsed since the day which brought me first to Lowood, and I had never quitted it since. My vacations had all been spent at school. Mrs. Reed had never sent for me to Gateshead. Neither she nor any of her family had ever been to visit me. I had no communication by letter or message with the outer world. School rules, school duties, school habits and notions, and voices and faces and phrases and costumes, and preferences and antipathies, such was what I knew of existence. And now I felt that it was not enough. I tired of the routine of 8 years in one afternoon. I desired liberty. For liberty I gasped. For liberty I uttered a prayer. It seemed scattered on the wind, then faintly blowing. I abandoned it and framed a humbler supplication for change, stimulus. That petition, too, seemed swept off into a vague space. Then, I cried, half desperate, grant me at least a new servitude. Here a bell, ringing the hour of supper, called me downstairs. I was not free to resume the interrupted chain of my reflections till bedtime. Even then, a teacher who occupied the same room with me kept me from the subject to which I longed to recur by a prolonged diffusion of small talk. How I wished sleep would silence her! It seemed as if could I but go back to the idea which had last entered my mind as I stood at the window, some inventive suggestion would rise for my relief. Miss Gryce snored at last. She was a heavy Welshwoman. Until now her habitual nasal strains had never been regarded by me in any other light than as a nuisance. Tonight I hailed the first deep notes with satisfaction. I was the barest of interruption. My half-effaced thought instantly revived. A new servitude! There is something in that, I soliloquized, mentally be it understood. I did not talk aloud. I know there is, because it does not sound too sweet. It is not like such words as liberty, excitement, enjoyment. Delightful words, truly, but no more than sounds for me, and so hollow and fleeting that it is mere waste of time to listen to them. But servitude, that must be matter of fact. Anyone may serve. I have served here 8 years. Now all I want is to serve elsewhere. Can I not get so much of my own will? Is not the thing feasible? Yes, yes, the end is not so difficult. If I only had a brain active enough to ferret out the means of attaining it. I sat up in bed by way of arousing this said brain. It was a chilly night. I covered my shoulders with a shawl and then proceeded to think again with all my might. What do I want? A new place and a new house, amongst new faces, under new circumstances. I want this because it is of no use wanting anything better. How do people get to a new place? They apply to friends, I suppose. I have no friends. There are many others who have no friends, who must look about for themselves and be their own helpers. And what is their resource? I could not tell. Nothing answered me. I then ordered my brain to find a response, and quickly. It worked and worked faster. I felt the pulses throb in my head and temples. But for nearly an hour it worked in chaos, and no result came of its efforts. Feverish with vain labor, I got up and took a turn in the room, undrew the curtain, noted a star or two, shivered with cold, and again crept to bed. A kind fairy, in my absence, had surely dropped the required suggestion on my pillow, for, as I lay down, it came quietly and naturally to my mind. Those who want situations advertise. You must advertise in the Shire Herald. How? I know nothing about advertising. Replies rose smooth and prompt now. You must enclose the advertisement and the money to pay for it under a covered letter directed to the editor of the Herald. You must put it, the first opportunity you have, into the post at Lowtown. Answers must be addressed to J.E. at the post office there. You can go and inquire in about a week after you send your letter, if any are come, and act accordingly. This scheme I went over thrice. No, this scheme I went over twice, thrice. It was then this sorry. Okay. It was then digested in my mind. I had it in a clear, practical form. I felt satisfied and fell asleep. With earliest day I was up. I had my advertisement written and closed and directed before the bell rang to rouse the school. It ran thus. A young lady accustomed to tuition, had I not been a teacher for 2 years, is desirous of meeting with a situation in a private family where the children are under 14. I thought that, as I was barely 18, it would not do to undertake the guidance of pupils near my age. She is qualified to teach the usual branches of good English education, together with French, drawing, and music. In those days, reader, this now narrow catalogue of accomplishments would have been held tolerably comprehensive. Address J.E., Post Office, Lowtown, Shire. This document remained locked in my drawer all day. After tea, I asked leave of the new superintendent to go to Lowtown, in order to perform some small commissions for myself and one or two of my fellow teachers. Permission was readily granted. I went. It was a walk of 2 miles, and the evening was wet, but the days were still long. I visited a shop or two, slipped the letter into the post office, and came back through heavy rain, with streaming garments, but with a relieved heart. The succeeding week seemed long. It came to an end at last. However, like all like all sublunary things. And once more, toward the close of a pleasant autumn day, I found myself afoot on the road to Lowtown. A picturesque track it was, by the way, lying along the side of the beck and through the sweetest skirts of the dale. But that day I thought more of the letters that might or might not be awaiting for me in the little burgh where I was bound, than of the charms of lea and water. My ostentable errand on this occasion was to get measured for a pair of shoes, so I discharged that business first, and when it was done, I stepped across the clean and quiet little street from the shoemaker's to the post office. It was kept by an old dame who wore horn spectacles on her nose and black mittens on her hands. "Are there any letters for J.E.?" I asked. She peered at me over her spectacles, and then she opened a drawer and fumbled along its contents for a long time, so long that my hopes began to falter. At last, having held the document before her glasses for nearly 5 minutes, she presented it across the counter, accompanying the act by another inquisitive and mistrustful glance. It was for J.E. "Is there only one?" I demanded. "There are no more," said she, and I put it in my pocket and turned my face homeward. I could not open it then. Rules obliged me to be back by 8, and it was already 7:30. Various duties awaited me on my arrival. I had to sit with the girls during their hour of study. Then it was my turn to read prayers, to see them to bed. Afterwards, I supped with the other teachers. Even when we finally retired for the night, the inevitable Miss Gryce was still my companion. We had only a short end of a candle in our candlestick, and I dreaded lest she would talk till it was all burnt out. Fortunately, however, the heavy supper she had eaten produced a soporific effect. She was already snoring before I had finished undressing. There still remained an inch of candle. I now took out my letter. The seal was an initial F. I broke it. The contents were brief. If J.E., who advertised in the Shire Herald of last, I don't know, blank Shire, I don't know, how do I do this blank Shire? Okay, well. If J.E., who advertised in the Shire Herald of last Thursday, possesses the acquirements mentioned, and if she is in a position to give satisfactory references as to character and competency, a situation can be offered her where there is but one pupil, a little girl, under 10 years of age, and where the salary is £30 per annum. J.E. is requested to send references, name, address, and all particulars to the direction. Mrs. Fairfax, Thornfield, near Millcote, Shire. I examined the document long. The writing was old-fashioned and rather uncertain, like that of an elderly lady. This circumstance was satisfactory. A private fear had haunted me that in thus acting for myself and by my own guidance, I ran the risk of getting into some scrape, and, above all things, I wished the result of my endeavors to be respectable. Proper, and règle. I now felt that an elderly lady was no bad ingredient in the business I had on hand. Mrs. Fairfax. I saw her in a black gown and widow's cap, frigid perhaps, but not uncivil, a model of elderly English respectability. Thornfield, that doubtless was the name of her house. A neat, orderly spot, I was sure, though I failed in my efforts to conceive a correct plan of the premises. Millcote, Shire. I brushed up on my recollections of the map of England. Yes, I saw it, both the shire and the town. This shire was 70 miles nearer London than the remote county where I was now resided. That was the recommendation to me. I longed to go where there was life and movement. Millcote was a large manufacturing town on the banks of a river. A busy place enough, doubtless. So much the better. A busy place enough, doubtless. So much the better. It would be a complete change at least. Not that my fancy was much captivated by the idea of long chimneys and clouds of smoke. But, I argued, Thornfield will probably be a good way from the town. Here the socket of the candle dropped, and the wick went out. Next day, new steps were to be taken. My plans could no longer be confined to my own breast. I must impart them in order to achieve their success. Having sought and obtained an audience of the superintendent during the noontide recreation, I told her I had a prospect of getting a new situation where the salary would be double what I now received, for at Lowood I only got £15 per annum, and requested she would break the matter for me to Mr. Brocklehurst, or some of the committee, and ascertain whether they would permit me to mention them as references. She obligingly consented to act as mediatrix in the matter. The next day she laid the affair before Mr. Brocklehurst, who said that Mrs. Reed must be written to, as she was my natural guardian. A note was accordingly addressed to that lady, who returned for answer that I might do as I pleased. She had long relinquished all interference in my affairs. This note went the round of the committee, and at last, after what appeared to be the most tedious delay, formal leave was given me to better my condition if I could, and an assurance added that I had always conducted myself well, both as a teacher and pupil, at Lowood. A testimonial of character and capacity, signed by the inspectors of that institution, should forthwith be furnished me. This testimonial I accordingly received in about a month, forwarded a copy of it to Mrs. Fairfax, and got that lady's reply, stating that she was satisfied, and fixing that day fortnight as a period for my assuming the post of governess in her house. I now busied myself in preparations. The fortnight passed rapidly. I had not a very large wardrobe, though it was adequate to my wants, and the last day sufficed to pack my trunk. The same I had brought with me 8 years ago from Gateshead. The box was corded, the card nailed on. In half an hour, the carrier was to call for it to take it to Lowtown, whither I myself was to repair at an early hour the next morning to meet the coach. I had brushed my black stuff travelling dress, prepared my bonnet, gloves, and muff, sought in all my drawers to see that no article was left behind, and now, having nothing more to do, I sat down and tried to rest. I could not, though I had been on foot all day. I could not now repose an instant. I was much too excited. A phase of my life was closing tonight, a new one opening tomorrow. Impossible to slumber in the interval. I must watch feverishly while the change was being accomplished. Miss, said a servant who met me in the lobby, where I was wandering like a troubled spirit, a person below wishes to see you. The carrier, no doubt, I thought, and ran downstairs without inquiry. I was passing the back parlor of the teacher's sitting room, the door of which was half open, to go to the kitchen, when someone ran out. It's her, I am sure. I could have told her anywhere, cried the individual who stopped my progress and took my hand. I looked. I saw a woman attired like a well-dressed servant, matronly, yet still young, very good-looking, with black hair and eyes and lively complexion. Well, who is it? She asked, in a voice and with a smile I half recognized. You've not quite forgotten me, I think, Miss Jane. In another second I was embracing and kissing her rapturously. Bessie! 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 Was all that I said, whereat she half laughed, half cried, and we both went into the parlor. By the fire stood a little fellow of 3 years old, in a plaid frock and trousers. That's my little boy, said Bessie directly. Then you are married, Bessie? Yes, nearly 5 years since to Robert Leven, the coachman. And I've a little girl besides Bobby there that I've christened Jane. Oh, this is so cute. She called her daughter Jane. Oh my gosh, I forgot this detail. Aw, Bessie. Aw. All right. So yeah, I did not expect. Okay, the first time I read, I did not expect to ever see Bessie again. But here's Bessie. Hey. How is Bessie here, by the way? All right. So okay. And you don't live at Gateshead? I live at the lodge. The old porter has left. Well, and how do they all get on? Tell me everything about them, Bessie. But sit down first. And Bobby, come and sit on my knee, will you? But Bobby preferred siding over to his mother. You've not grown so very tall, Miss Jane, nor so very stout, continued Mrs. Leven. I dare say they've not kept you too well at school. Miss Reed is the head and shoulders taller than you are, and Miss Georgiana would make two of you in breadth. Georgiana is handsome, I suppose, Bessie? Very. She went up to London last winter with her mamma, and there everybody admired her, and the young lord fell in love with her, but his relations were against the match. And what do you think? He and Miss Georgiana made it up to run away, but they were found out and stopped. It was Miss Reed that found them out. I believe she was envious, and now she and her sister lead a cat and dog life together. They're always quarreling. Well, and what of John Reed? Oh, he's not doing so well as his mamma could wish. He went to college and he got plucked, I think they call it, and then his uncles wanted him to be a barrister and study in the law. But he is such a dissipated young man, they will never make much of him, I think. What does he look like? Oh, he's very tall. Some people call him a fine-looking young man, but he has such thick lips. And Mrs. Reed? Mrs. looks stout and well enough in the face, but I think she's not quite easy in her mind. Mr. John's conduct does not please her. He spends a deal of money. Did she send you here, Bessie? No, indeed, but I have long wanted to see you, and when I heard that there had been a letter from you, and that you were going to another part of the country, I thought I'd just set off and get a look at you before you were quite out of my reach. I'm afraid you're disappointed in me, Bessie. I said this laughing. I perceived that Bessie's glance, though it expressed regard, did in no shape denote admiration. No, Miss Jane, not exactly. You're genteel enough. You look like a lady, and it is as much as I ever expected for you. You were no beauty as a child. Well, thanks, Bessie, I guess. I smiled at Bessie's frank answer. I thought that it was correct, but I confess I was not quite indifferent to its import. At 18, most people wish to please, and the conviction that they have not an exterior likely to second that desire brings anything but gratification. I dare say you're very clever, though, counted Bessie, by way of solace. What can you do? Can you play the piano? A little. There was one in the room. Bessie went and opened it, and then asked me to sit down and give her a tune. I played a waltz or two, and she was charmed. The Miss Reeds could not play as well, she said exultingly. I always said you would surpass them in learning. And can you draw? That is one of my paintings over the chimney-piece. It was a landscape in watercolors, of which I had made a present to the superintendent, in acknowledgment of her obliging mediation with the committee on my behalf, and which she had framed and glazed. Well, that is beautiful, Miss Jane. It is as fine a picture as any Miss Reed's drawing master could paint, let alone the young ladies themselves who could not come near it. And have you learned French? Yes, Bessie. I can both read it and speak it. And can you work on muslin and canvas? I can. Oh, you are quite a lady, Miss Jane. I knew you would be. You will get on whether your relations notice you or not. That was something I wanted to ask you. Have you ever heard anything from your father's kinsfolk, the Eyres? Never in my life. Well, you know, Mrs. always said that they were poor and quite despicable. And they may be poor, but I believe they are as much gentry as the Reeds are. For one day, nearly 7 years ago, a Mr. Eyre came to Gateshead and wanted to see you. Mrs. said you were at school 50 miles off. He seemed so much disappointed, for he could not stay. He was going on a voyage to a foreign country, and the ship was to sail from London in a day or two. He looked quite a gentleman, and I believe he was your father's brother. What foreign country was he going to, Bessie? An island thousands of miles off, where they make wine. The butler did tell me. Madeira? I suggested. Yes, that is it. That's the very word. So he went. Yes, he did not stay many minutes in the house. Mrs. was very high with him. She called him afterwards a sneaking tradesman. My Robert believes he was a wine merchant. Very likely, or perhaps a clerk or agent to a wine merchant. Bessie and I conversed about old times an hour longer, and then she was obliged to leave me. I saw her again for a few minutes the next morning at Lowtown, while I was waiting for the coach. We parted finally at the door of the Brocklehurst Arms there. Each went her separate way. She set off for the brow of Lowood Fell to meet the conveyance which was to take her back to Gateshead. I mounted the vehicle which was to bear me to the new duties and a new life in unknown environs of Millcote. End of chapter. All right, so a chapter that covers the interim between the devastation of the typhus epidemic to Jane Eyre being 18 years old, of age, and setting out for a new chapter in her life. So very informative. Not only do we get to see how Jane has got up to, she's now a teacher at Lowood School, but we also got information about from her family, updates about them. Thank Bessie for having come in to try to catch up and see Jane Eyre one more time before she leaves, and thank goodness she did so sooner rather than later, because it was on the very night that Jane Eyre was to leave was the day that Bessie arrived to see her. So lovely, the reunion. I really enjoyed that. So yes, let me see. Oh, I see some comments. A little butterfly says hitherto. Hitherto. Oh, hitherto. Okay. Hitherto. Okay. Hitherto. So accent on the first one. Hitherto. Okay, thank you. Hitherto. Thank you. Thank you, little butterfly. Have a lot of hearts for me. All right, so I will never have a problem with hitherto again. All right, Crusher says, since she put up that Ressurgam inscription, I guess she now either believes in God like Helen, or she at least respects her friend's beliefs. Either way, that's very sweet of her. Yes, I believe that's very sweet of her. So we don't know the trajectory that Jane's life will take. This is what the story is. And also, like I said before, this story helps. This is a story that's a coming of age story. Yes, it has romance. Yes, it has like gothic elements, but it's mostly a coming of age story in which we see her, her growth in her not only personal but also in belief system, and so many changes are going to happen. So at the end of the road, we can assume that Jane has finally come to like a mature, or like just coming to her own with like beliefs that she absolutely is rock solid on. Like, you know how like when we're kids, we're still very shapeable. Like life is still shaping us. Our values are still, but then at some point in your life, you come to your beliefs, and and from those beliefs, you make your decisions and you act, right? So it's very hard once you're like an adult and you have, anyway, I don't know what I'm saying. So yeah, this is Jane's coming of age story and how she thinks about religion, thinks about herself, thinks about independence and all sorts of things that we touch upon in this novel. Yes, so look forward to that. I'm sure. Crusher, have you read this book, by the way? I forget. Somebody here. Okay, who has read this book already? Because I know the Blue Castle, maybe only one person had read it before. But this one, I'm sure there's more people. Anyway, so yes, Bessie and Miss Temple got the good ending. Yeah, so they both were able to, not that marriage is a good ending, like or the only good ending, because a lot of us, not a lot of us, some of us, have this, are yet still looking for the special someone, but you can still be like an accomplished, happy person without marriage. However, in that day and age, women were expected to find like make a home, like get married, have a establishment of your own, children of your own, so you could be a proper contributing member of society. Nowadays, of course, you don't have to be married in order to have your own independent house, to live a productive life, to be part of society. That's a good thing. But yeah, back in the day, it was considered the good ending to get married to somebody who was good and respectable and have a home. That was the best ending. That was the only good ending, you guys. Unless you were rich, then you could probably be a independent spinster for life, but you had to have money. Anyway, let's see. So yes, Liz, hey, how are you, Liz? Happy to see you here. Hello. And okay, so Liz has read the book. Crusher also has read it. Okay. And then Akihana, hello. It says, we'll be looking forward to watching the replay because of stuff. Okay, no problem. Oh, I see. Earlier on you said, what time did this start? It started at 5 my time, so we have been at this for 15 minutes. We're going to read another chapter, maybe. Let me see. It's a rather long chapter though, you guys. So probably we may end... Yeah, it's gonna be... It's gonna be longer than the one I just read. I don't know. So what I read was 14 pages. This is going to be 20 pages. So it's gonna take me a while to get through. So you guys, I think I'm gonna stop here for today. It was lovely to read to you guys. Next time, we will read everything about going to meet... Jane Eyre goes to her new place, where she meets her new employer. She meets the girl she's going to be a teacher to. Look forward to it, and I hope that you join me. It'll be on Monday for sure. We'll have a read along. Who knows? Maybe I can fit something on Sunday, but I don't think so because it's Mother's Day. So I'm just not even gonna try. So yeah, you guys, I'll see you on Monday again. Thank you for joining me today. And if you like the story, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. And yes, hope you guys have a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. All the mothers that are listening to here, thank you so much for being such amazing moms. And all the rest of us who are children, of course, and who have like moms or maternal figures, because a lot of us are not fortunate enough to have a mom still around. But anybody who is a mother figure to you, be sure to show them love and hugs and just appreciate them. So yeah. All right, everybody. Oh yes, Liz Lepper says women in that time period, women weren't allowed to be alone. Yeah, it wasn't like they weren't allowed, it was just not safe. Not a good look. Not a good look to be a spinster. You're in a very vulnerable situation if you were a spinster. Yeah. So okay. Everybody, do take care, and I will see you on Monday. Until then, bye-bye.